The stench hit Marcus Chen like a physical blow the moment he stepped off his cargo hauler. Kepler Station's slave market reeked of desperation, unwashed bodies, and the chemical suppressants used to keep the merchandise docile. He pulled his jacket tighter, trying to ignore the sick feeling in his stomach as he walked past the holding pens. Marcus hadn't come here by choice. The Terran Colonial Authority had frozen his salvage permits after some bureaucrat decided his last find was too valuable for civilian acquisition. Now he was broke, stranded on this godforsaken station with a ship that needed repairs he couldn't afford. The job posting had been simple. Transport cargo to the outer rim, no questions asked. The pay was enough to get him back in space. He just hadn't expected the cargo to be alive. Captain Chen. A Vorthek trader approached, his forearms gesturing toward a reinforced transport container. Your merchandise is ready for loading. Premium conditioning, guaranteed compliant for the full journey. Marcus forced himself to nod. He transported slaves before. Everyone had, if they wanted to keep flying in this part of the galaxy. The Galactic Trade Consortium had made it clear. Human moral objections didn't override economic reality. Still, he usually managed to avoid looking too closely at the faces. Let me see the manifest, he said, accepting the datapad. The list was depressingly familiar. A dozen Korathi miners, probably captured during one of the border skirmishes. 3 Gulden technicians, their neural implants already removed to prevent sabotage. And at the bottom, almost as an afterthought, 1 Zelthani female, damaged goods, transport fee waived. Damaged how? Marcus asked, though he immediately regretted it. The Vorthak's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Mental conditioning went too far. Previous owner wanted to break her completely, succeeded too well. Now she's nearly catatonic. Buyer on Arcturus VI wants her anyway, probably for spare parts. Zelthani organs fetch good prices. Marcus felt his jaw clench. The Zelthani were one of the most advanced species in known space, their technology centuries ahead of human achievements. Before the Consortium's expansion, they'd been explorers and teachers, sharing knowledge freely with younger civilizations. Now most of them were dead, and the survivors had been scattered to the slave markets. Where is she? Pen 7. But Captain, I wouldn't waste time. Marcus was already walking away. Pen 7 was at the far end of the market, in the section reserved for the lowest value merchandise. The holding cell was barely large enough for its single occupant, a transparent aluminum cube with basic life support. She sat motionless in the center of the space, knees drawn up to her chest. The Zelthani were humanoid, but taller and more slender than humans, with elongated skulls and large, dark eyes that reflected intelligence most species could barely comprehend. This one's skin was pale gray, almost translucent, with the intricate bioluminescent patterns that marked her as female. Those patterns should have been bright and shifting, but now they were dim, barely visible. Her head was shaved, revealing the neural scarring, where conditioning implants had been forcibly installed and later removed. Dark bruises covered her arms and legs. Someone had dressed her in a simple gray jumpsuit that hung loose on her thin frame. But it was her eyes that stopped Marcus cold. Everyone else saw emptiness, the vacant stare of a broken mind. But Marcus had spent years reading people. It kept you alive in the salvage business. Behind the careful mask of compliance, he saw something else. A flicker of awareness, of rage, of intelligence that had learned to hide itself. She was looking right at him. The moment lasted only seconds before her gaze dropped back to the floor, but it was enough. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a familiar burning sensation he'd thought was long dead. It was the same feeling he'd had as a child, watching his father stand up to the corporate security forces on Mars. The same feeling that had driven him to become a salvage captain instead of joining the consortium fleet. "I'd want to see her," he told the attendant, a nervous-looking human who kept glancing at the security cameras. Sir, I really don't recommend. Open the pen. The man reluctantly activated the containment field controls. The transparent barrier shimmered and vanished. Marcus stepped inside, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible. My name is Marcus, he said quietly. I'm going to be taking you to Arcturus VI. She didn't respond, didn't even lift her head. But he saw her shoulders tense slightly. I know you can understand me, he continued, and I know you're still in there, no matter what they did to you. This time she did look up, and for just a moment, her bioluminescent patterns flared brighter. Then they dimmed again, and she returned to her vacant stare. Marcus made his decision. Change of plans, he told the attendant as he stepped out of the pen. I'm buying her. Sir, that's not how the transport contracts work. How much? The attendant consulted his pad. She's listed at 50 credits, but honestly, you'd be wasting your money. The Arcturus buyer is paying transport costs specifically because. 50 credits. Done. Marcus transferred the funds, ignoring the man's protests about contract violations and buyer agreements. He had no idea what he was going to do with a traumatized Zelthani female. He barely had enough money left to fuel his ship, let alone care for a passenger who would need medical attention and probably psychological rehabilitation. But he couldn't leave her here, wouldn't leave her to be butchered for spare parts. As the transport container was loaded onto his ship, Marcus caught one last glimpse of those dark eyes through the viewport. This time, he was sure he saw something new in them. Hope. The journey to the outer rim would take 6 days through hyperspace. Marcus had planned to keep the Zelthani female in the cargo hold's medical bay, but something made him change his mind. Instead, he set up a small cabin in the passenger quarters, removing anything that could be used as a weapon and installing basic monitoring equipment. Her name was in the transport documents, Kirathal Zeph Nalani, though the file noted she no longer responded to it. Marcus tried using it anyway when he brought her meals, speaking softly through the intercom. She never acknowledged him, sitting motionless on the narrow bunk and staring at the bulkhead. On the second day, he found her collapsed on the cabin floor. Computer, medical emergency in passenger cabin 2. Marcus shouted as he knelt beside her unconscious form. Her skin had taken on a bluish tinge, and her breathing was shallow and irregular. The medical scanner revealed the problem. Her body was rejecting the standard nutrient supplements he'd been giving her. Zelthani physiology required specific mineral compounds that weren't included in human or consortium rations. Damn it, Marcus muttered, checking his ship's inventory. He had some general xenobiology supplies, but nothing specifically formulated for Zelthani biology. Without proper nutrition, she would die within days. He carried her to the medical bay and connected her to an IV drip, using basic saline to buy himself time. Then he sat down at his terminal and began searching through the ship's databases for any information about Zelthani dietary needs. 3 hours later, he found it buried in an old scientific journal from before the Consortium Wars. A detailed analysis of Zelthani biochemistry written by a human xenobiologist named Dr. Sarah Chen, his aunt, who had died defending a Zelthani research station 15 years ago. The data was complex, but Marcus had grown up around his aunt's work. He understood enough to synthesize a basic nutritional supplement using the ship's fabricator. It wouldn't be perfect, but it might keep Kira alive until they reached a proper medical facility. When she woke up 12 hours later, Marcus was sitting beside the medical bed, monitoring her vital signs. The IV contains nutrients your body needs, he said without looking up from his scanner. You were dying of malnutrition. She didn't respond, but he saw her eyes track to the medical equipment, then to his face. For a moment, her bioluminescent patterns flickered with what looked like confusion. I know you understand me, Marcus continued. The neural conditioning damaged your speech centers, but it didn't touch your comprehension areas. That was deliberate, They wanted you aware of your situation but unable to communicate. This time her patterns flared brighter, and she tried to sit up. Marcus gently pushed her back down. Easy. Your body's been running on empty for weeks. You need to rest while the supplements work. Over the next 2 days, Kira's condition slowly improved. Her skin regained its natural gray tone, and her bioluminescent patterns became more active. She still didn't speak, but Marcus caught her watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. On the 4th day, he made a breakthrough. "I've been thinking about your situation," he said, bringing her dinner to the medical bay. "The buyer on Arcturus VI thinks he's getting damaged goods for organ harvesting. But you're not damaged, are you? You're hiding." Kira's patterns suddenly blazed with complex colors, deep blues mixed with rapid gold flashes. Marcus didn't know Zelthani biocommunication, but he recognized distress when he saw it. "It's okay," he said quickly. "I'm not going to turn you over to them. But I need to know what happened to you and what you're running from." She stared at him for a long moment, then slowly raised her right hand. Her fingers moved in a series of precise gestures, sign language. Marcus activated his translator and focused the scanner on her hands. The device struggled with Zelthani sign language, but after several attempts, words appeared on the screen. "Why? Help? Me?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Marcus replied simply. Her hands moved again, more quickly this time. "Humans? Take. Slaves? Too. Some do. I don't. Prove." Marcus considered this, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, the remote control for her transport container's security systems. Without hesitation, he tossed it to her. "There, you're free to go whenever you want." Kira caught the device, her eyes widening. She stared at it for several minutes, then looked back at Marcus with an expression he couldn't read. Her hands moved in a longer sequence. "My true name, Kirathal. Zeph Nalani. I was engineer prime of Zelthani Deep Space Fleet." Marcus felt his breath catch. Engineer Prime was one of the highest technical positions in Zelthani society, equivalent to a human admiral's rank, but focused on technology rather than military command. "What happened to you?" The patterns on her skin shifted to deep red, the Zelthani equivalent of pain or anguish. "Captured 3 cycles ago. Consortium? Wanted. Access to quantum fold drive technology. I refused. They used neural conditioning to break my mind. But it didn't work. It worked too well." Her signing became more fluid as she warmed up. "They broke my speech centers, damaged motor control, left me appearing catatonic, but my core consciousness remained intact. I let them think I was destroyed." Marcus leaned forward. "Why? Why not fight back?" Kira's patterns shifted to a color Marcus had never seen before. Deep purple shot through with silver threads. "Because I carry something they cannot be allowed to have. The location of the last archive." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The last archive was a legend, a mythical Zelthani repository containing the accumulated knowledge of their species. Most people believed it was destroyed with their homeworld. It's real, and hidden. Contains not just our technology, but proof of consortium, war, crimes, evidence that could free every slave In the galaxy. Marcus sat back, his mind racing. If what Kira was telling him was true, she wasn't just another victim of the slave trade. She was potentially the most valuable person in known space. And she had just trusted him with the biggest secret in the galaxy. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Kira's bioluminescent patterns stabilized into a steady, bright blue, the color of determination. "Help me reach the archive. Help me finish what my people started." Marcus stared at the navigation display, his coffee growing cold in his hands. 3 days had passed since Kira revealed her true identity, and he still couldn't quite believe what he'd gotten himself into. The coordinates she'd given him led to a sector of space that officially didn't exist. A region the consortium had declared a navigation hazard and sealed off from civilian traffic. "You're sure about this?" he asked for the 10th time. Kira had moved back to the passenger cabin, but she spent most of her time in the ship's small workshop, her hands dancing over Marcus's repair projects with an engineer's precision. Her motor control was returning faster than he'd expected, and her bioluminescent patterns had grown brighter and more complex each day. "The archive was designed to survive the death of our civilization," she signed, pausing in her work on a damaged power coupling. "My ancestors foresaw the possibility of conquest. They prepared." Marcus watched her work, marveling at the elegant efficiency of her movements. She had taken apart and reassembled his ship's entire navigation array in 2 days, improving its accuracy by 30%. His makeshift repairs were being replaced with solutions that bordered on miraculous. "The consortium thinks they destroyed us," she continued. "But the archive contains the genetic patterns of our entire species, along with our accumulated knowledge of science, philosophy, and art. With it, the Zelthani could be reborn." "And the evidence you mentioned?" Kira's patterns shifted to angry red. Communication logs, tactical data, proof that the consortium deliberately targeted civilian populations. They told the galaxy we were a threat, that we had developed weapons of mass destruction. In truth, we were pacifists who refused to share our technology with an empire built on slavery. Marcus felt that familiar burning sensation in his chest again. His Aunt Sarah had tried to tell people the truth about the Zelthani War, but no one had listened. The consortium's propaganda machine was too powerful, too persuasive. "How do we know the archive is still there?" he asked. "It's been 15 years. "Because I would know if it had been found." Kira held up her hands, and Marcus saw that the tips of her fingers bore intricate scaring patterns. "I am biolinked to the archive's security systems. As long as it remains hidden, I can sense its presence." She was quiet for a moment, then continued. "It is also why they could never fully break me. The conditioning implants tried to sever my connection to the archive, but the bond is too deep. Genetic, spiritual. The pain of maintaining it while under neural torture was considerable." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying you endured 3 years of conditioning to protect the location of the archive?" 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Her patterns flickered with remembered pain. But it was necessary. The archive must not fall into consortium hands. The ship's proximity alarm chimed, indicating they were approaching the edge of the restricted sector. Marcus checked his instruments and frowned. The space ahead looked empty, but his sensors were picking up strange readings, gravitic distortions that shouldn't exist in open space. "Kira, you need to see this." She joined him at the navigation console, her tall frame folding gracefully into the co-pilot's seat. Her eyes studied the sensor data, and her bioluminescent patterns began cycling through complex sequences. "The labyrinth," she signed, wonder evident in her gestures. "It still functions." "The what?" "A defensive system designed by my people. Gravitic mines that create false space-time distortions. Ships that enter without the proper navigation keys become lost in pocket dimensions, trapped until their life support fails." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. And you know the navigation keys. They are encoded in my genetic memory. But Marcus, her patterns shifted to concerned yellow. Once we enter the labyrinth, there is no turning back. The consortium will detect our passage eventually, and they will send everything they have to stop us. Everything. The archive represents an existential threat to their power structure. They will mobilize entire fleets to prevent its secrets from reaching the galaxy. Marcus looked at the sensor display, then at Kira's expectant face. He thought about his Aunt Sarah, about the slaves in the pens on Kepler Station, about all the lies he'd been forced to accept as truth. "Do it," he said. Kira placed her hands on the navigation console, and Marcus watched in fascination as her bioluminescent patterns synchronized with the ship's systems. The scars on her fingertips began to glow, and suddenly the console was alive with data streams he couldn't begin to understand. The ship lurched forward, entering the restricted sector. Immediately, the stars around them began to shift and bend, reality twisting in ways that made Marcus's eyes water. His instruments went haywire, showing impossible readings, distances that changed even as he watched them, gravitational fields that pointed in multiple directions simultaneously. "Hold steady," Kira signed without taking her hands off the console. "The labyrinth tests intruders. It will try to convince you that we are lost, that space itself has become hostile. Do not trust your instruments or your eyes. Trust only the path I am showing you." For 6 hours, they navigated through the impossible maze. Marcus watched Kira work with growing admiration. Her entire body had become part of the navigation system, her patterns shifting to match the quantum fluctuations around them. She was beautiful and terrible, a fusion of organic intelligence and technological mastery that took his breath away. Finally, the distortions began to fade. The stars steadied, and Marcus's instruments returned to normal readings. Ahead of them, a massive object resolved out of the darkness. It wasn't a planet or a space station. It was something else entirely. A crystalline structure the size of a small moon, its faceted surfaces reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Geometric forms that belonged in no natural universe extended from its core, reaching into dimensions Marcus couldn't perceive. "The last archive," Kira signed, her patterns blazing with joy and reverence. "The final gift of my people to the galaxy." As they approached, Marcus saw smaller structures orbiting the main complex, automated defense platforms that had waited 15 years for their creator's return. The archive itself pulsed with internal light, and he realized that what he was seeing was not just a repository of knowledge, but a living entity. The crystalline growth patterns, the way it seemed to respond to their presence. This was Zelthani biotechnology merged with their most advanced quantum engineering. "It's alive," he whispered. "In a sense, yes. The archive contains the uploaded consciousnesses of the greatest Zelthani minds, preserved to guide future generations. My grandmother is in there, and my mother, and thousands of others who chose to join the archive rather than face capture." A communication beam reached out from the archive, washing over their ship with patterns of light that reminded Marcus of Kira's bioluminescence. She pressed her hands against the viewport, and her entire body erupted in brilliant patterns as she communicated with her people's final sanctuary. Then she turned to Marcus, and he saw tears streaming down her face, the first time he had seen her show such naked emotion. "They have been waiting," she signed, "waiting for someone to bring them home." The archive's docking bay opened like a flower blooming in space, its biomechanical petals extending to embrace Marcus's ship. As they settled into the berth, Marcus felt the artificial gravity field engage, not the harsh, uniform pull of human technology, but something that seemed to flow and adapt to their movements. "Stay close to me," Kira signed as they prepared to disembark. "The archive's security systems will recognize my biosignature, but they may perceive you as a threat." The airlock opened to reveal a corridor that defied human understanding of architecture. The walls curved and flowed like living tissue, pulsing with the same bioluminescent patterns that decorated Kira's skin. The air was warm and humid, carrying scents of growing things and ozone from electrical systems. "It's beautiful," Marcus said, his voice echoing strangely in the organic space. Kira's patterns brightened with pride. "This is how we build, in harmony with living systems rather than in opposition to them." The archive is not just a structure, it is an ecosystem. They walked deeper into the complex, passing chambers filled with crystalline matrices that hummed with stored data. In one room, Marcus glimpsed what looked like a garden, but the plants were geometric fractals that shifted and grew in response to their presence. In another, streams of light flowed through transparent tubes like liquid information. "The uploaded minds," Kira explained, seeing his fascination. "They exist as patterns of quantum information, but they can still experience beauty, still create and learn and grow." They reached the archive's central chamber, a vast spherical space with no apparent floor or ceiling. Gravity shifted as they moved, allowing them to walk on any surface. At the center of the sphere, a column of pure light extended in all directions, pulsing with the combined heartbeat of an entire civilization. "Grandmother," Kira called out, her bioluminescence suddenly blazing brighter than Marcus had ever seen it. "I have returned." The column of light shifted, and suddenly a figure materialized in front of them. Not solid, but composed of the same flowing patterns that filled the archive. She was tall and elegant, her features similar to Kira's, but bearing the wisdom lines of great age. When she spoke, Marcus heard her voice through translation implants that he hadn't realized were being installed. "Kira Thal, child of my heart. We felt your pain across the years. We feared you were lost to us forever. I am here, grandmother, and I have brought someone who helped me find my way home." The grandmother's attention turned to Marcus, and he felt like he was being examined by a force of nature. Her luminous eyes seemed to see through him, cataloging every thought and motivation. "A human," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "It has been many years since one of your species showed us kindness." "Not all humans support the consortium," Marcus said, hoping his words wouldn't be taken as presumption. "No," the grandmother agreed. "Some, like the one called Sarah Chen, died defending us. Her sacrifice is recorded in our memory banks. You bear her genetic markers. You are family to her. She was my aunt." The grandmother's form brightened. "Then you are doubly welcome here, Marcus Chen. Your aunt's work helped us understand that humanity was not our enemy, only those who had twisted your species' potential for their own gain." More figures began to materialize around them. Hundreds of Zelthani minds, representing the greatest scholars, artists, and leaders of their civilization. Marcus felt overwhelmed by their presence, by the weight of accumulated wisdom that surrounded him. "Show him," Kira signed to her grandmother. "Show him what the consortium tried to hide." The grandmother nodded, and suddenly the chamber filled with images, holographic displays showing the true history of the Zelthani War. Marcus watched in horror as consortium fleets bombarded civilian targets, as peaceful research stations were destroyed without warning, as refugee ships were hunted down and their passengers sold into slavery. "We never fired the first shot," the grandmother explained. "We defended ourselves only when attack was imminent. But the consortium needed us to be the aggressor in their propaganda." "Why?" Marcus asked, though he was beginning to understand. "Because we represented everything they feared, a spacefaring civilization that had achieved prosperity without slavery, without conquest, without the exploitation that formed the foundation of their empire. Our very existence was proof that their way was not the only way." The images shifted, showing Zelthani technology that Marcus could barely comprehend. Medical devices that could regenerate entire organs, energy systems that drew power from quantum fluctuations, transportation methods that folded space itself. "All of this knowledge remains locked away," another voice said. Marcus turned to see a new figure materializing. younger than the grandmother, but bearing the bearing of a natural leader. I am Keth Morin, former commander of the Deep Space Fleet. I died defending the evacuation of our homeworld. The archive contains the complete scientific and cultural heritage of our people, Keth Morin continued. Medical treatments that could eliminate most diseases, energy technologies that would make resource wars obsolete, social philosophies that could guide the galaxy toward true peace. But it also contains something else, the evidence needed to expose the consortium's crimes and free their slaves. What do you need from me? Marcus asked. Kira stepped forward, her patterns cycling through complex emotional states. The archive cannot move itself. It was designed to wait, to preserve, not to act. We need someone with a ship, someone the consortium doesn't suspect, to carry copies of the critical data to resistance cells throughout the galaxy. It will be dangerous, the grandmother warned. The moment the consortium realizes what you carry, they will mobilize everything to stop you. Fleets, assassins, entire armies. Nothing will be too much to prevent this information from reaching the galaxy. Marcus thought about the slaves on Kepler Station, about his aunt's death, about the lies that had shaped his entire life. The burning sensation in his chest had become a flame that consumed all his doubts. I'll do it, he said. The data transfer will take several hours, Keth Morin explained. But there is something else. Kira Thal, you must make a choice. Kira's patterns stilled. What choice? You can remain here with us. Your consciousness can join the archive, safe from further harm. You would be reunited with your family, your friends, all those you have mourned. Or, you can return to the physical world, carrying a portion of the archive within your own mind. You would become a living repository of our knowledge, able to guide and teach those who seek to rebuild. But you would also be forever changed, forever connected to technologies that will make you a target for every power in the galaxy. Marcus watched Kira struggle with a decision, her bioluminescent patterns shifting through what looked like every emotion in the spectrum. Finally, she turned to him. If I go with you, I can help you understand the data, help you find the right people to share it with. But I will be even more valuable to the consortium. They will never stop hunting us. Then we'd better make sure they never catch us, Marcus replied. Kira's patterns blazed with determination. I choose the physical world. I choose to fight. The grandmother smiled, an expression of pure love and pride. Then let us begin the preparation. Marcus Chen, you came here as a simple cargo hauler. You will leave as the most important person in the galaxy. No pressure, Marcus muttered, but he was smiling too. The real work was about to begin. The data transfer took 8 hours, during which Marcus watched in fascination as the archive's quantum matrices interfaced directly with Kira's nervous system. She lay suspended in a chamber filled with bioluminescent fluid, her patterns synchronized with streams of information that flowed around her like liquid starlight. The process is painful but necessary, the grandmother explained as Marcus watched from the observation deck. She is not merely receiving data, she is becoming a hybrid entity, part biological intelligence, part quantum processing system. Will she still be herself? More herself than ever before, but also more than herself. She will carry the wisdom of 10,000 Zelthani minds, the accumulated knowledge of our entire species. It is a burden no one should have to bear alone. Marcus felt a chill. Are you saying she'll lose her individual identity? No, child. I am saying she will need an anchor, someone to remind her who she was before she became everything we needed her to be. As the process continued, Marcus felt increasingly useless. The archive's uploaded minds bustled around him with purpose, preparing data packets and downloading information to his ship's systems. But he was just a human with a cargo hauler, surrounded by technology that made his best equipment look like stone tools. You doubt your importance, Keth Morin observed, appearing beside him as Marcus stared out at the stars. What can I do that you can't? You have defensive systems, quantum communication arrays, technology that can reshape matter at the molecular level. Why you need me? Because we are dead, Marcus Chen. We are echoes of who we once were, preserved patterns of thought and memory. We can think, we can plan, we can even feel emotion, but we cannot act in the physical world. We cannot inspire others, cannot form the personal connections that turn information into revolution. Keth Moran gestured toward the chamber where Kira was undergoing her transformation. She chose to remain physical so she could guide you, but even she will need time to integrate what she is becoming. In the months ahead, you may be the only one capable of making the choices that will determine whether our sacrifice has meaning. What if I make the wrong choices? Then you will make them for the right reasons, which is more than most can say. When the process was finally complete, Kira emerged from the chamber fundamentally changed. Her bioluminescent patterns had become incredibly complex, cycling through mathematical sequences that seemed to describe the structure of reality itself. When she looked at Marcus, her eyes held depths that hadn't been there before. "I can see it all," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate. "Every connection, every possibility, every path that leads from this moment to the future." "Are you still you?" Marcus asked, unable to hide his concern. Kira smiled, and in that expression he saw both the broken slave he had rescued and something infinitely vast and ancient. "I am still me, Marcus. But I am also my grandmother, and my mother, and every Zelthani who ever dreamed of a better galaxy. I carry their hopes now." She reached out and took his hand, and Marcus felt a subtle electric tingle where their skin touched. "I also carry their trust in you." The goodbye process was elaborate, with the uploaded minds sharing final messages and blessings. But underneath the ceremony, Marcus sensed urgency. Something was wrong. "The consortium has detected our passage through the labyrinth," the grandmother finally admitted. "A battle fleet is approaching. Admiral Vex Corvain commanding, with orders to capture or destroy whatever they find here." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Corvain was a legend in consortium military circles, famous for his ruthless efficiency and his particular hatred of alien species. If he was coming here personally, it meant the consortium understood exactly what they were dealing with. "How long do we have?" 6 hours, perhaps 7. Enough time to complete the data transfer to your ship, but not enough to evacuate the archive. Then we evacuate it. Kethmaren shook his head sadly. "The archive cannot be moved, Marcus. It is integrated with the quantum structure of this space. To relocate it would require dismantling the technology that keeps our consciousness patterns stable." "So you're just going to wait here to die?" "Again." "We died 15 years ago," the grandmother said gently. "What we have done since then has been borrowed time, a chance to preserve what mattered most about our civilization. Now that preservation is complete." Marcus looked around at the hundreds of luminous figures, poets and scientists, engineers and philosophers, the concentrated essence of one of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. The thought of them being destroyed by Corvain's fleet filled him with rage. "There has to be another way." "There is," Kira said quietly. Her patterns had stabilized into something resembling calm determination. "But it will require a sacrifice." She began explaining her plan, and Marcus felt his admiration for her intelligence warring with his horror at what she was suggesting. It was brilliant, audacious, and completely insane. "Absolutely not," he said when she finished. "I won't let you do it." "It is not your choice to make," she replied. "This is why I was born, Marcus. This is why I survived 3 years of conditioning, why I endured the pain of maintaining my connection to the archive. Not to escape, but to ensure that when the moment came, I would be ready to act. There has to be another way. There is no other way. Corvain will destroy the archive to prevent its knowledge from reaching the galaxy. But if we can make him believe he has captured something even more valuable." The grandmother placed a luminous hand on Marcus's shoulder. She is right, child. And she will not be alone. We will be with her every step of the way. Until the end. Until the end. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices. When he opened them again, he saw Kira watching him with an expression of infinite compassion. "Trust me," she said simply. "Trust us." The archive began implementing Kira's plan with ruthless efficiency. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to find alternatives, wanted to do anything except stand by and watch while the most extraordinary person he had ever met prepared to sacrifice herself for the galaxy. But he also knew she was right. This was bigger than both of them, bigger than any individual life. The future of every enslaved being in the galaxy hung in the balance. "What do you need me to do?" he asked finally. Kira's patterns brightened with gratitude and love. "Survive, Marcus. Carry our gift to those who can use it. And remember us not as we died, but as we lived." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The archive's quantum matrices were reconfigured, creating what appeared to be a massive data core, but was actually an elaborate trap. The real information, the evidence of consortium war crimes, the location of resistance cells, the technological blueprints that could free the galaxy, was compressed into quantum storage matrices small enough to hide in Marcus's ship's navigation computer. Kira worked alongside the uploaded minds, her new hybrid consciousness allowing her to interface directly with the archive's systems. But Marcus noticed she was also doing something else, copying portions of the uploaded personalities into her own enhanced neural structure. "Insurance," she explained when he asked. "If something goes wrong, if the plan fails, at least some part of the archive will survive in me." "How much can you carry?" "More than I should, less than I want to." Her patterns flickered with pain. "The integration is difficult. 10,000 voices all trying to speak at once. But it is necessary." As Corvin's fleet approached, the archive made its final preparations. The uploaded minds gathered in the central chamber one last time, their combined luminescence turning the space into a cathedral of light. "Remember us," the grandmother said, addressing both Marcus and Kira. "Remember that we chose hope over despair, knowledge over ignorance, sacrifice over surrender. Remember that we believed in a future worth dying for." "I will," Marcus promised, his voice thick with emotion. "We will," Kira added, her patterns now so complex they seemed to describe entire universes. The first consortium ships appeared on the archive's sensors, massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons designed to crack planets. Marcus felt his courage falter as he realized the true scale of what they were facing. "Go," Kethmorin ordered. "Execute the plan before they establish a full blockade." Marcus and Kira ran for their ship, the archive's corridors seeming to shift and flow around them as the biomechanical systems prepared for their final function. Behind them, the uploaded minds began their last great work, the creation of a deception so perfect that even Admiral Corvain would believe it. As Marcus's ship launched from the archive, every sensor in the consortium fleet locked onto them. The small cargo hauler seemed pathetically vulnerable next to the massive warships, exactly as Kira had planned. "Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Corvain of the consortium fleet," a harsh voice crackled over the communication system. "You are in violation of restricted space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Marcus opened the channel, letting fear and desperation color his voice. "Please, Admiral, we're just salvage operators. We got lost in the gravitic distortions and found this place by accident. We don't want any trouble." "Scan that ship," Corvain ordered his tactical officer. The powerful sensors of the flagship swept over them, detecting exactly what Kira had programmed them to find, trace signatures of Zelthani technology and biological readings consistent with a traumatized alien survivor. "Sir, we're detecting Zelthani energy patterns and one non-human life form aboard their vessel." "A survivor?" Corvin's voice sharpened with interest. after all these years? Appears to be female, heavily damaged neural pathways consistent with conditioning breakdown. The human appears to be transporting her as cargo. Perfect, Marcus thought. They were seeing exactly what Kira wanted them to see. A broken slave being transported by an opportunistic human, not a hybrid consciousness carrying the compressed knowledge of an entire civilization. Tractor them in, Corvain ordered. I'd want to examine this survivor personally. As the consortium flagship's tractor beam locked onto their ship, Marcus felt Kira's hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm, reassuring, and somehow conveyed the presence of all the uploaded minds within her. Remember, she whispered, whatever happens next, you must not try to save me. The mission is everything. Marcus wanted to argue, but there was no time. The tractor beam was pulling them into the flagship's cavernous docking bay, where hundreds of consortium soldiers waited to take them into custody. The interrogation chamber aboard Admiral Corvain's flagship was designed to break the strongest wills. White walls reflected harsh lighting that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, while hidden speakers generated subsonic frequencies that induced anxiety and despair. Marcus had been separated from Kira immediately upon their capture, locked in a holding cell while consortium specialists examined both her and the fabricated evidence in their ship's computers. Hours passed before Corvain himself entered Marcus's cell. The Admiral was exactly what central casting would order for a consortium villain. Tall, pale, with augmented eyes that glowed with artificial light and surgical scars that spoke of extensive battlefield modifications. Marcus Chen, Corvain said, consulting a data pad. Salvage operator, multiple violations of consortium space, recently fired from the Colonial Authority for inappropriate curiosity about classified materials. Your psychological profile suggests a dangerous tendency toward moral absolutism. I just wanted to get paid, Marcus lied, letting exhaustion color his voice. The Zelthani female was cargo, nothing more. Indeed. Tell me, Mr. Chen, what do you know about the creature you were transporting? Just what was on the manifest. Damaged goods, neural conditioning gone wrong. The buyer on Arcturus VII wanted her for spare parts. Corvain's augmented eyes whirred as they focused on Marcus's face, no doubt running stress analysis and lie detection protocols. And you never suspected she might be more than she appeared. She never said a word the entire trip. Barely moved. I figured the conditioning had turned her brain to mush. It was technically true, which helped sell the lie. Corvain seemed satisfied, making notes on his pad. Your ignorance may have saved your life, Mr. Chen. The creature you were transporting is no ordinary slave. Our preliminary analysis suggests she is Kirathal Zeph-Nalani, former engineer prime of the Zelthani Deep Space Fleet, one of the most wanted fugitives in consortium space. Marcus let his eyes widen in what he hoped looked like genuine shock. That's impossible. She was catatonic. An act, apparently. A very convincing one. Corvain's expression grew predatory. She has information we need. The location of Zelthani technology caches, the identities of resistance sympathizers, possibly even the whereabouts of their mythical archive. Information that will be extracted, one way or another. What happens to me? That depends on your cooperation. The consortium can be generous to those who assist in important matters. There may even be a reward for your inadvertent capture of such a valuable prize. Marcus nodded eagerly, playing the part of a greedy opportunist. Inside, his heart was breaking as he realized what Kira must be enduring in the hands of consortium interrogators. 3 days later, Corvain returned with news that chilled Marcus to the bone. Your passenger has been remarkably cooperative, the Admiral reported. Under advanced interrogation techniques, she has revealed the location of the Zelthani archive, the very installation we detected in this sector. Our assault teams are preparing to secure it as we speak. Marcus forced himself to remain calm. That's great news, Admiral. Does this mean I'll be released? Soon. But first, I thought you might be interested in observing the final phase of our operation. Corvain led Marcus to the flagship's main observation deck, where massive screens showed the consortium fleet surrounding the archive. The crystalline structure looked even more beautiful and alien against the backdrop of the assembled warships, its faceted surfaces reflecting their weapon signatures like a geometric mirror. Magnificent, isn't it? Corvain mused. The final repository of a dead civilization, about to yield its secrets to a living empire. Marcus watched in horror as assault shuttles launched from the fleet, carrying boarding parties toward the archive. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. The archive's surfaces began to pulse with increasing brightness, and its orbital defense platforms suddenly came online. What's happening? Corvain demanded of his tactical officer. Sir, the archive is powering up some kind of defensive system. Energy readings are off the charts. On the screens, the archive transformed. Its crystalline surfaces unfolded like a massive flower, revealing technological systems that belonged in no human understanding of physics. Streams of energy began flowing between its various components, and the space around it started to warp and bend. It's beautiful, Marcus whispered, and meant it. The first boarding shuttles to reach the archive simply vanished, not destroyed, but translated into some other dimension entirely. The remaining craft retreated hastily as reality continued to twist around the alien structure. Sir, the tactical officer's voice was strained with panic. Long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitic distortions throughout the system. The archive isn't just defending itself, it's collapsing local spacetime. Corvain's face went white. A doomsday weapon. Negative, sir. Analysis suggests it's some kind of quantum translation device. The entire structure is preparing to shift into hyperspace, or possibly another universe entirely. Marcus understood. This was Kira's plan reaching its culmination. The archive wasn't being destroyed. It was being moved beyond the consortium's reach, relocated to a dimension where their technology couldn't follow. The prisoner. Corvain snarled. She knew this would happen. They rushed to the detention level, but they were too late. Kira's cell was empty, its security systems disabled from the inside. Alarms were blaring throughout the ship as her escape triggered every alert protocol in the consortium manual. Find her, Corvain roared. Lock down every deck, every compartment. But Marcus knew they wouldn't find her. As the archive completed its translation, he felt a subtle vibration through the ship's hull, the quantum resonance of a transportation beam. Kira had gone home. The screens showed the archive's final moments in their reality. The crystalline structure blazed with light bright enough to blind unprotected eyes, then simply faded away like a mirage. In its place, empty space remained, along with a consortium fleet that had traveled across the galaxy to capture nothing but vacuum. Status report, Corvain demanded. The archive is gone, sir. Completely absent from all sensor readings. Whatever that translation process was, it worked perfectly. And the prisoner? No trace, sir. It's as if she never existed. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Kira had done it. The archive was safe, the uploaded minds preserved, and the most important intelligence in the galaxy was now beyond consortium reach. But his moment of satisfaction was short-lived. Mr. Chen, Corvain said quietly, his augmented eyes focusing on Marcus with predatory intensity. I'm beginning to suspect that your role in recent events was not as innocent as you claimed. Before Marcus could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A familiar voice filled the bridge, Kira's voice, but changed, harmonized with the uploaded consciousness of thousands of Zelthani minds. Admiral Corvain. This is Kirathal Zeph Nalani, speaking on behalf of the Zelthani Archive Collective. We broadcast now on all frequencies to every world in consortium space. Corvain lunged for the communication controls, But the message was already propagating across the galaxy's communication networks, carried by quantum relays that the archive had quietly compromised during its years of waiting. For 15 years, you have been told lies about my people, Kira's voice continued. You have been told we were aggressors, that we threatened the peace and stability of civilized space. Today, that lie ends. The screens around the bridge flickered, then filled with images, the true history of the Zelthani War, taken from consortium military archives that Kira had somehow accessed during her brief captivity aboard the flagship. Evidence of war crimes, slave raids, the deliberate targeting of civilians. Proof that the entire war had been manufactured to justify conquest and enslavement. The archive contains detailed records of consortium atrocities, along with the locations of resistance cells throughout your empire. This information is now being transmitted to every rebel group, every freedom fighter, every person who dreams of liberation from your tyranny. More images flashed across the screens. Technical specifications for Zelthani medical technology, clean energy systems, faster-than-light communication networks. Technologies that could eliminate scarcity and suffering throughout the galaxy, all being freely shared with anyone who wanted them. But knowledge without hope is meaningless, Kira continued. Therefore, the archive makes this promise. To all who suffer under consortium rule, to all who dream of freedom, we offer sanctuary. The coordinates being transmitted with this message will lead you to safe harbor, to worlds where our technology can give you the tools to build better lives. Corvain was screaming orders, demanding that his communication officers cut the transmission, but it was too late. The message was propagating through quantum channels faster than any jamming system could track. To those who would continue the cycle of oppression, Kira's voice took on harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond human perception. Know that the archive watches. We remember every crime, catalog every atrocity. Justice may be delayed, but it will not be denied. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Then the reports began flooding in. Uprisings on a dozen worlds, slave revolts on mining colonies, entire consortium fleets defecting to join the resistance. The galaxy was awakening. 60 years, Corvain whispered, staring at the screens showing rebellion spreading like wildfire across his empire. 60 years of consortium rule, ending because of one alien and a salvage captain with delusions of heroism. Marcus felt that familiar burning sensation in his chest, but now it had transformed into something else entirely: pride, purpose, and the unshakable conviction that he had chosen the right side of history. Not ending, he corrected. Beginning. This is what the beginning of freedom looks like. Corvain raised his sidearm, his face twisted with rage and desperation. But before he could fire, Marcus smiled. Too late, Admiral. The message is already out there. The truth is spreading faster than you can suppress it. And somewhere out there, in a dimension you can't reach, Kira and her people are preparing to help build something better than your empire ever was. As alarms continued to wail throughout the flagship, Marcus closed his eyes and thought about a broken slave in a transparent cage, about the spark of defiance he had seen in her eyes, about the choice he had made to see her true worth when everyone else saw only damaged goods. The revolution had begun, and it would not be stopped.